I'm back with Graham Fuller. He's the former vice chair of the U.S. National Intelligence Council and also served as CIA station chief in Kabul, Afghanistan. You've been critical of the war on terror, certainly when it started under the Bush administration, as to some extent a war on Islam. I mean, there was a real demonization of the Muslim world. Tell me what concerned you about how it started?
Well, I mean, I'd have to say Bush, at least to his credit in this respect, did not say that it was all due to Islam and tried to suggest that there were many different facets of Islam and this was a radical side of it, which is correct. But essentially, first of all, I think the horrors of 9/11 were taken as license by a group of neoconservative ideologues to not only go after Islam and with the agenda of partly protecting Israel in this sense, but more to the point to project American power globally, so that we would have bases all over the world that could help keep China in check, Russia in check, and other such things. So it was a global program. And a militarized program, and with essentially a military solution to what I think has been a political problem, an intelligence and a police problem, not something that can be solved by military means. By using military means, we have in effect turned it into a war against Islam because Muslims have felt directly under siege. They volunteered, therefore, to go out and fight in the trenches against the American presence. So it becomes a
self-fulfilling
Exactly.
prophecy.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's still going on.
Right.
So, and with no end in sight. And the recruits in the name of radical Islam are growing as we speak, the longer American boots are on the ground, or NATO boots are on the ground, in Afghanistan and Iraq, just to name the biggest of those U.S. presences.
There are these patterns that countries go through. Certainly the United States is a good example of after when World War II started, certainly when Pearl Harbor was bombed, there was this reaction domestically. Let's round up Japanese Americans, and in Canada as well. Canada, to some extent, in a larger sense than in the U.S., proportionally back then with the Japanese, demonizing a group. During the Cold War, so anyone from Russia or Eastern Europe was often suspect. Do you feel like there's a new scare, and some calling new McCarthyism, when it comes to Muslim Americans or Arab Americans? Is there a sense that you're kind of guilty until proven innocent?
Yeah,
we haven't followed it?
I think inevitably in this rather paranoid atmosphere that I think dominates the United States today, and fear of further terrorist attacks, it's a legitimate fear, but the question is how do you deal with it? I think Muslims very definitely have become suspect, and as the fact that most of the wars that are underway now are in Muslim countries further reinforces that idea.
Well, there are certainly policymakers who would like to see, would like to imagine a world without Islam, as your book is entitled, and see that as perhaps the solution. If there weren't Muslims, there wouldn't be radical Muslims. Tell me about this world without Islam that you've written about. You've sort of imagined. How would things be better?
Well, that's exactly the main point of the book. Is it's been very easy and convenient in the United States and the West in general to blame it on Islam, to examine what's the problem with Islam, that we should have these issues. Why should there be insurgencies going on? Why should there be terrorism? Why should be this and that and the other thing? I have gotten rather tired of what I see as a rather self-serving analysis in that way. The fact is, history did not begin with 9/11. To those of us who have been following the Middle East and the Muslim world for quite some time, we all knew that there were deep grievances and angers building and building and building over the years, so that in the end somebody, and obviously an extremist who would be the first to take action, would take an action like this, was shocking but not surprising. In that sense, we don't. But the response was then saying, what is it about Islam that's causing this to happen? Whereas most of the rest of us who are in the analytic community are saying, what have been the policy problems that have brought us to this particular juncture? There are many. I mean, you can go back into history between not just Islam, but the Middle East and the West. that show a history of confrontation, essentially between any society, any culture in the Middle East, long before Islam, that was having certain kinds of confrontations with the West about imperialism or resources or access or whatever else, or wars of expansionism. So this book essentially saying, look, let's pretend there was no such thing as Islam. What would be the nature of relations between the West and the Middle East today? And I do argue that, it could be not all that much different, because the grievances that people who live in that area, namely that there's been Western imperialism, Western colonialism, Western control of it, Western invasions of that region for a very long time, a seizing of resources over very long periods of time, playing those countries against the Soviet Union in the Cold War. A whole range of reasons, constant support for Middle Eastern dictators who will do what the United States wants them to do rather than what the populations want them to do. When you put all of these facts together, there's a lot of reason for real anger in the Middle East and you don't even have to be a Muslim at all to feel that way about it.
Right. We just have about a minute left, but you are the man, at least for me, who predicted the Shiite insurgency, and of course it came true twice. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, what's the next big issue in your mind? People talk about Yemen as a real area of concern. Is there a particular country or region that you're concerned about that might explode soon?
My real concern is that the military approach to the war on terrorism is simply creating a cancer that is spreading and spreading with more Muslim opposition to those boots on the ground, which are deeply resented. So yes, the question is what next state will be the likely place where that war will be fought out unless we pull back from a military approach. And Yemen is one high up on the list. Somalia, obviously, already involved in many of these ways. So I would argue until this ends, until the military approach ends, it's going to be an endless war.
Well, on that note, thanks for joining us, and good luck with the book.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Mr. Fuller's book, A World Without Islam, will be available later this summer. If you have a question or comment about the interview we just had with Mr. Fuller, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is info@thestandardtv.ca. Coming up next, Rex Weiler. He's the co-founder of Greenpeace, but he's also a biblical scholar. He'll be here to chat about what he's uncovered about Jesus Christ next.